Good morning everyone, I'm David from Calvary Church Ballina, and just thinking about chapter 4. That's what we're up to in Gentle and Lowly, and it's a chapter in which the author writes about the idea of sympathy. Now, sympathy is a funny word. Perhaps you've received a card when you were going through bereavement and mourning or some kind of troubles in your life, and the card said, "with our sympathies." And even as you read that card, you realize this person has no idea what I'm going through. They can't sympathize with me at all. They offer me their sympathies, but really they have no idea, and we feel completely alone in our pain. Well, the idea of sympathy that's spoken of in chapter 4 is much better than Jesus sending us a card with his sympathies. The author points us to Hebrews in the Bible in chapter 4 verse 15, where we're told that Jesus is the perfect high priest for us because he is able to sympathize with our weaknesses. And he describes this sympathy on page 46 like this. Sympathize here is not cool and detached pity. It's a depth of felt solidarity such as is echoed in our own lives most closely by the parent-to-child relationship. Indeed, it's deeper even than that, because in our pain, Jesus is pained. In our suffering, he feels the suffering as his own, even though it isn't. He feels our suffering. And as the author goes on, he points us back to chapter 2 in Hebrews, where it says that Jesus was made like his brothers in every respect, and we're told that he himself suffered when tempted. It's a scandalous thought that Jesus faced the same weakness and suffering and temptation as us, but with one difference. He was without sin. And so sometimes we're tempted to say, well, then he can't really sympathize because he didn't go through the depth of our pain and suffering if he was able to withstand it. But the writer points out that and he quotes C.S. Lewis in doing so, that it's like walking into a really strong wind, this temptation. At some stage we give up and lie down, and that's us sinning. But Jesus didn't ever do that. And so he knows the true force of that wind because he never lay down, he never gave up, he kept pushing against it and was perfect in his sinlessness. And so he knows that temptation and the buffeting and the struggle that it is to live as a human even more intensely than we do. And so he is able to offer us real sympathy, to understand what it is that we go through, and more than that, to be with us in that. And so this chapter ends with this great encouragement that we are never alone. If you're in Christ, it says, you have a friend who, in your sorrow, will never lob down a pep talk from heaven. He cannot bear to hold himself at a distance. Nothing can hold him back. His heart is too bound up with yours. I'll see you next week as we look at chapter 5, which deals with how this sympathy shows itself in the way he treats us, in the way he deals with us. I'll see you then.